when I use Claude, the limiting frustrating factor is like, even though, yes, Claude can see my whole repo and all the code in it and all that, Claude is not in my brain.
There's a lot of imposter syndrome when it comes to being a, let's say, non-developer background, getting into developing with these tools. You think you can't do it, and you can.
The stuff we can do with AI now is not just a prototype like it was a year ago. Like a year ago, even at Webflow, we had product designers prototyping the product internally, which was cool, but again, none of it was wired up.
You can genuinely, truly build real production stuff. Guys, the marketing site that our company relies on was entirely vibe coded. It's been live now for over a month. That's not a prototype.
That, for me, recently is where my passion has like really been set on fire, almost back to like when I found Webflow.
I think the time that we're in right now is so exciting for everyone. So a lot of people think, whether you're a software engineer and you're like, are like random people on my team going to be able to do my job for me, or whatever you are, I'm going to share the story of how Ship Studio came to be super quickly. So long story short, we're talking, we come up with this idea, and I'm like, I want to see if I can make a prototype for this. So I go ahead and I made a prototype. Actually, first, here's the thing. I started making it. I had my own assumptions. I'm like, oh, it's going to be like browser-based. Anyone can just log in. It's going to work perfectly. And I spent like 8-10 hours sort of thing working on it, and just, it wasn't going anywhere. Like I was running uphill entirely. Then I took a step back and I'm like, okay, clearly I'm approaching this wrong. Ended up realizing that this makes a lot more sense to be a desktop app. So in about 3 to 4 prompts, I had a better MVP than what took me like 10 hours in browser, which was so sick. So I keep working on it from like Friday to Sunday, Monday. And then I've shared it with the team. And here at MemberStack, we have, developers, obviously. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, how is this going to go? I want to know what their thoughts are on the code. Because I'm using it, it works. But perhaps an engineer is going to look at this and be like, dude, this is going to break the second it like hits a real user. So I had no idea. I can read the code base, but there's a lot of imposter syndrome when it comes to being a, let's say, non-developer background, getting into developing with these tools. You think you can't do it, and you can. But anyways, so I send it to them. They look at it and they're like, yeah, this code is good. However, there are some things that I missed that aren't too good, and they're able to go over that and look at it. So since we launched Studio, basically the workflow has been this. I come up with ideas. They come up with ideas. We're all shipping to the same product at the same time. I'll come up with an idea and I'll sit here and go, I feel a little bit out of my depth. So I will push a change to the code base, let them know. They'll go take a look at it and be like, oh, I see what you're doing here. Here's how we can do it better. They fix it. And so we're working in the exact same way. But when you think about, let's say, traditional development workflow, it's like people will talk about a feature idea, then they'll hand it off to a designer. Designer will iterate. It goes back a few rounds of feedback. Then it gets handed off to the developer, a few more rounds of feedback. And then at the end, the designer changed their mind. They want something else. And it's like, now I'll come up with an idea and make it and done. Or I'll come up with an idea and be like, this is what I want, but it's not working too great. It happened the other day with Ship Studio. I wanted like multi-window support so you could work on a few projects at once. I did it, but it was buggy. And so I sent it to Josh and Tyler on the team, and they're like, they went in, made it better, and then released it. And that workflow is incredible. Like we're getting to a point where every single person on the team can contribute, but at the same time, your engineers like Josh and Tyler on our team, obviously you have a lot of engineers who have been looking at AI and they're just like, this concerns me, whatever it may be. Like they are needed. They are so useful for any larger, larger company, something that actually matters. Like without them, here's the thing, I'm going in blind. And this workflow at this point, I mean, I'm just going to say, to put it simply, we're out shipping some companies that are worth a couple $2 billion just between the three of us, not to name it. But it's insane, dude. It's amazing. And the thing is, when I look back, literally 1 year ago, I was like, messing around with like GPT, using Wiz to build some web apps and stuff. My workflow, dude, has like entirely transformed in the past 365 days. People look and they're like, oh, a year. 365 days. I'm saying like the most stupid, obvious thing I've ever said in my life, but like, dude, 300, you go to bed, you wake up, that's 1 day. Multiply that by 365, My workflow time is completely different. So I want to know, can you take a look back and think like, what were you doing? Not, your work day to day, but like, what was your workflow like? Let's say
Mm,
brand designer through and through. Like, what were you doing a year ago? What are you doing
mm.
now?
Yeah, this is a fantastic question. I think that the near past with like a year ago wasn't radically different. I would say a key difference was just like, purely in Webflow, building sites, still in Figma, here and there, especially on the team at Webflow. Yeah, so our brand web team, specifically that owned webflow.com, we were I guess what, 4 or 5 all designer developer combos. We didn't have separate, like we didn't have designers and then Webflow developers. Like we only ever hired people that did both. We just found that worked better. Although it was harder for hiring sometimes, it worked better for executing projects. And then I ended up managing that team my last year I was there. And so, between managing and then also just like spreading work around, I was in Figma less and less and less and more in Webflow and meetings and things more and more and more. Fast forward today, ironically, like on the team at Anthropic, we do have a couple just like mainly designers. They will still get in Webflow, do simple stuff. And then otherwise, like myself and a couple others are more intimately in Webflow very often. But then at the same time, I'm in code a lot more, either for custom stuff on top of Webflow, but then even also just tinkering and other things. Like we have another site, Insanity, and so I've been really excited to start to learn a lot more about how to use that. I've been working on like rebuilding Mast in it just as an experiment of something I'm deeply familiar with, but in an environment I'm not, to see how that goes and gauge if it's good. And especially like I think a detail you mentioned that really in the last year resonates a lot for me is also the very specific, that I think is a distinction many still brush over, especially in-house or like across engineering teams, is that like the stuff we can do with AI now is not just a prototype like it was a year ago. Like a year ago, even at Webflow, we had product designers prototyping the product internally, which was cool. But again, none of it was wired up. It was all just like clicking things. And even when you're like, whatever AI, go make me a app. Like a lot of the times, the first thing you get feels real as a designer because you can actually click and it changes states and goes to pages, but like nothing was usually actually wired to a database or publishable or whatever. It had real authentication. Fast forward to today, like everything I've done in Sanity is real. Like it's not a prototype. It's I could literally go start building a site and publish it live today if I wanted to. And I think that's the part for me that's like, holy smokes. Like it's hard for me to even fully grasp that potential and that reality. And I think at the same time, just like also share it in a way confidently with those on my team or even other people that I'm friends with that are more engineers. And I just want to kind of like, hey, see, check out what I'm working on. Like, is this okay? Like you said, can you code review whatever? And I had Claude put together like a big markdown file of like a code review. Here's all the tech specs and all the things that it checked and qualified and reviewed against React best practices, etc. And it seems like it all checks out. I think there's still just this like apprehension and assumption from the last year of like, oh yeah, it looks great, it works when I do it, but like, is it actually like I still hear this term prototype being used, and I'm like, but it's not like it's real, even to your point of like you are actually contributing PRs that are maybe being refined, but they're still being merged, they're real features. So like, what does this mean when all of those things start to overlap? I think a broad thing for me is what you nailed, is that the engineers on your team see things, but I think specifically they see things not just from the lens of what that exact, what however many lines of code is. They have a massive amount of context, which is, in my opinion, still, when I use Claude, the limiting, frustrating factor is like, Claude, even though, yes, Claude can see my whole repo and all the code in it and all that, Claude is not in my brain. Claude does not understand, all the context of my team and all those things. And that, for me, recently is where my passion has like really been set on fire, almost back to like when I found Webflow, right? Like, I guess before I go down that whole quickly, the other thing I was going to note on this question is like, I think, I think I started using Webflow in like 2017 or 18 ish. And I found it, I was at a company that did like events and incentives for other companies. And so our design team operated like an agency. And so we'd build these like micro sites for events and campaigns and things. And it was always so cumbersome. It was the classic thing everybody experienced. Like I was a digital designer. I would design the site. I would hand it to a developer. we'd then ensue back and forth and head battering and like, no, 4 pixels does matter. No, it doesn't. Like blah blah blah. And like then out of frustration, I had already just dabbled in code at that point, but it really accelerated my passion to learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript like to their core, just like to be super transparent, to prove them wrong, like to be like, no, I can do this, whatever it is. Here's the code, go do it. Like, because clearly you don't understand CSS or whatever. And again, that's a very not positive, savage way to think about it, but like that was my fuel. And then I found Webflow out of a research project of like, maybe there's tools we can do this better. And dude, that led to then I was designing and building sites for clients, and then like it even led to one of our 2 developers that would help with those microsites was let go because we simply didn't need to. Like they also supported email. It was something I never would have wanted as the outcome, but like that was a transition I very viscerally experienced then, and then is giving me all the memories now because of not, again, to be clear, especially now, I think in engineering, it is far less likely that we will see like full replacement for those that are fully leaning into it, like the people on your team and those like instead, I think so many teams are recognizing the accelerant of it, right? And like even when I mentioned movies and things earlier, one plug to go check out if it's at all interesting, even though I would definitely say don't watch this movie expecting it to be a good movie. It is very much a B movie, but I think the premise is powerful. There's a movie called Atlas. I think it's on Netflix with Jennifer Lopez in it. So like, known person. And long story short, it's a similar doom and gloom AI of like her mother creates AI and then actually like creates this humanoid robot and then finds a way to sync her brain as a child with the robot to help it advance its intelligence. It becomes aware of all the evil in the world and then therefore becomes evil and the world landslides or whatever. But then the glimmer of hope is that fast forward, humanity has found a way to reuse that linking ability, but in a way that is a 10x catalyst for us. So then like she ends up in this like mech robot that is, where she syncs fully with an AI bot, and then their combined ability of her limitless context and its awareness and intelligence to, recognize patterns in milliseconds is like all of a sudden, undefeatable. And like, again, so cheesy, but the underlying premise is so inspiring for me and something I think about even just in these realms of working with engineers more, or like us then being involved in that product life cycle, or in the context of websites, like helping to build real stuff that like, look, it's just helping all of us. So like, how do we all just come together under that and then also lean into the things we're most excited about and experienced with at the same time, right? Like your engineers and your team having that full context. And like for me, that's the biggest part now in this day and age from a year ago is like, okay, recognizing those things I don't have, that I'm limited on. I don't have experience with like scaling massive GitHub repos and dealing with like Git and PR workflows and CI reviews and all these like terms and things that, like, to be real, I have avoided like the plague for most of my career. That's why I loved Webflow so much, love Webflow so much, is like I don't have to think about all that. I make the change, I click publish, it's live. I don't have to deal with the drama and, potential friction of Git and all these other engineering toolings that, like, for me, have always felt like overdeveloped. Why do I need all this for the small risk that a word goes out wrong? But guess what? I can just change again and republish. Like, it's not the end of the world. So I don't know. It's an exciting time. It's hard to make sense of for sure.
It is. It is. And man, back to what you said as well about like how it was a tool for prototyping, and that was really cool. That's all well
Yeah.
and good. I don't think people have fully come to terms, and hopefully there's some, Webflow developers watching this who, here's the thing, guys, to all the Webflow developers watching this.
Yeah.
Another thing I understand is that you guys are, head down in client work. Like you have a job to do, you have a client,
Totally.
deadlines, and that's
Yep.
why I really try to make these videos, because I understand how busy all these people are. I have the luxury of having a job where my job is to basically tinker with all this new stuff, so I have the luxury of being able to be at the front of the curve. They don't necessarily. And so a lot of people who haven't had the time to try out what AI has turned into, like, no longer just a prototyping tool. I got this email and I made a tweet about it today from a company, not going to say the name. whatever. I'm just trying to be nice. It's an AI building product, to say the least. And
Right.
just to read it, it starts with most AI vibe coding, with quotes around it, tools are great for demos, but they fall apart when real code components and workflows show up. I'm like, what? No, first of all,
Yeah.
like that would have been relevant a couple of years ago, but it just shows how many people will look at that and, believe that
Oh,
that's really the case. That's not the case anymore. You can genuinely, truly build real production stuff. Guys, the marketing site that our company relies on was entirely vibe coded. It's been live now for over a month. That's not a prototype. There's no aspect of prototype involved in that. And so
totally.
people just need to understand that and go in
Mm.
whatever direction they want.